Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions today during the presentations, please type them into the Q&A icon on your Zoom toolbar, and we'll get to them at the end of each presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. I'd like to welcome everybody to the June 12th edition of Crop Talk. And this week we're going to go through a few things. We're going to have Sonia Wilson on, and she's going to talk a bit about what the 2024 canola crop looks like right now. We're going to got some questions that have come in for the scouting panel over the past week. We've had some funny weather going through and cool weather still, so there's some questions that have been coming up because of that. And we're going to make a few changes. We're going to bring the crop update right after the crop scouting panel. Just this way we can get right into the how does the canola crop look for this year. So with that, I'm going to turn the screen over to Sonia, and let's see what how our canola is looking.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Lionel. I'm just sharing my screen here. Okay, how's that look?
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I'm just going to do here a quick update on canola and a couple of things that we've been seeing here in May and June, and what's kind of on the radar as well here for the rest of June. So a couple updates in terms of acres. So we had here in 2023, in Manitoba harvested 3.1 million acres. That was down about 3.1%. And so the projections for this year here in 2024, we're up to 3.2 million acres. So projecting an increase about 2.4%. And I put a little asterisk here because we had a couple of conditions, right, that may affect canola acres potentially. And one of the big ones being the amount of moisture that we've received here, definitely in parts of the province. And so potentially affecting acres that we can get in. So I have put that little asterisk. But in terms of seeding progress, and this is as of Monday, Tuesday this week, canola seeding is looking to be about 88% complete here in Manitoba. So we've seen in areas in the southwest and central sitting at 95%, if not fully completed. And then areas, the northwest and eastern, sitting at about 80% completed. And then Interlake sitting at 60%. And I've put that asterisk there again, because there have just been some very wet conditions, which have made it hard to access the field or get it into seed. And so definitely there's been a focus on potentially floating on canola to get it seeded and to get it in before those seeding deadlines. So overall, the spring here and seeding received evidently a lot of moisture, and it's definitely been a push to get done in the windows where the field can be accessed. So that's what kind of we're sitting at for seeding, etc. If we take a hop, just look at a couple other provinces as well, we see that Alberta, Saskatchewan, they did receive more moisture, but not to the level, of course, that we have here in Manitoba. And so as of last week was very, very close to being finished, all of their seeding. And then a couple of reports in South Central Alberta as well, reporting some flea beetle and cutworms above threshold. And then I just pulled here the canola staging in Saskatchewan sitting at, this was about a week ago, so evidently has progressed since then, but about 50% pre-emergent, 50% at seedling, just to, if you're interested. So when we take a look at June, and it's been a very fast June, we see our seeding deadlines here coming up for canola, and I just wanted to do a quick rundown. So canola area 1 being June 15th, canola area 2 here June 10th, so that's already passed. And then the extended seeding period, which definitely to be taken advantage of for some areas in terms of canola area 1 being June 20th and canola area 2 here June 15th. So when we take a look at the crop and where it's sitting at, and what are some of the topics, that have been hot here in May and June, definitely in terms of staging, it's of course a range, and we've seen everything from pre-emerge right now to some actually sitting at 5 to 6 leaf, and so. It really depends, of course, when it's seeded, but also if you've been receiving some of those cooler temperatures, that we definitely have had some stretches that have just, kind of had slower growth for the canola, but definitely some at that 5 to 6 leaf stage already. Now, we have had more moisture, of course, this season. And so moisture helpful in a lot of ways for our canola growing, but also for weeds as well. So that's been definitely a hot topic that we've seen. And there's just been a lot more, of course, weed pressure here. So um, just wanted to highlight that as a topic. And there are some really great resources as well that are provided in terms of there's a weed seedling identification guide and as well as the crop protection guide that would really help for make those herbicide passes really effective. So knowing what weeds do you have in your field and where they are at in terms of stage, especially if we do receive some warmer temperatures, they're going to move really quickly. Making sure that you're using registered tank mixes. And then what's really come into play as well is just knowing for your herbicides, what's your rain fastness, the wind speed and minimum temperatures in terms of if you're heading to the field. All of those factors have really come into play with the amount of precipitation we've received. A lot of higher winds or gusts of winds, right, which have made getting into field to do those passes more of a challenge. And then also we've had some of those lower temperatures. So all of those being really key factors to make sure that your passes are as effective as possible to control your weeds. So I also here just pulled from the crop protection guide a great example of how it shows the weed stage and then picking your correct rate as well. So what we've seen in terms of insects, and I just want to do a quick overview for diseases as well. Insects, we have had, of course, flea beetles have been out. So these are the overwintered adults from previous year. John has done a great job of highlighting as well in previous crop talks. And you need to be, keeping on top of how much damage there is to your crops here, to your canola, because we've definitely seen it progress very quickly. And so there has been as well some reports of foliar spraying for sure. So I just wanted to highlight it's that window before your canola is 3 to 4 leaf that is key to be out there to be scouting, because that damage can just happen very quickly and of course affect your potential yield. So you're looking at, of course, 3 to 4 leaf. And if your damage is approaching a threshold of about 25% defoliation, you want to be going and looking at doing a foliar spray. Now, if your crop is stressed, or if it's providing conditions where flea beetle feeding is going to be very quick, then you potentially want to go in and do your spray a bit earlier than that 25%. And there's two places actually that you want to look for damage from your flea beetles. So one, of course, is your leaves. They're going to be just like I have this picture here. You're going to be on your leaves feeding. And a bit of damage, of course, is going to happen because they have to ingest that bit of canola to receive the insecticide. But, making sure it's not getting 25% or more. So one area you want to look at is the leaves that they're feeding on. And then a second place is the stem, because especially if it's windy weather, they will be hiding and feeding there on the stem and potentially can actually eat through your stem, right? So those are actually both places that you'll need to check for flea beetle damage. And so, yeah, again, the key is just scouting, as this can happen really quickly, especially with warm and not windy weather. So keeping that on your radar. And then there's also been in the past bit here scouting for both cutworms and diamondback moths. So in terms of cutworm damage, what you're looking for, cutworms are nocturnal, so you're not going to see them if you're scouting during the day. So look for areas where you have missing canola. So it can be localized patches where the cutworms are all feeding and then we'll move on, or plants that are toppling over, completely cut off. So again, your threshold here is about 25% stand reduction, and looking for those signs in your field. And then diamondback moths, in terms of damage, it would look like small irregular kind of holes, or shotgun holes, it's sometimes called, or the entire leaf actually being eaten. And diamondback moths can affect canola at your seedling or early stages here. So keeping on top of that as well. And your action threshold here also is about 25% defoliation, especially if you can see larvae still present on your plants. And I wanted to also pull up, so here's an example of a cutworm larva, and then also that the crop pest report here has diamondback moth counts as well. So this is a great resource to take a look at, and it'll show just by region what some of those numbers for diamondback moths are looking like. So then we also have, I just wanted to bring attention as well to some, potential for diseases that we're seeing here, especially with the higher moisture. And then as we get into warmer temperatures, just providing that environment for, disease potential. So potentially for sclerotinia and blackleg. And I know we're going to touch on that a bit more in the crop scouting panel questions. So I'll leave that for now. So what are we currently looking for in the field? So that was kind of taking a look at what in May, June, and it's not a ton that's different here. We're still looking for those things. And I just wanted to highlight as you go through, and we're doing the passes, your herbicide passes, looking afterwards, are there any escapes in your field? What part of your program potentially wasn't as effective as needed to be? And so taking a look at that after having done your passes. Again, your flea beetle damage, especially if your canola is younger and we're getting into those warm temperatures and looking at both leaf and stem. Again, cutworm and diamondback moth damage. And then also to see seedling disease, is there potential that you have seedling disease? So in terms of, that'll look like, again, patchy emergence. So potentially your seeds not germinating or emerging, or stems or roots, you're seeing that they are being affected. And this can be from a lot of reasons. This can be because when you're seeding, it was very wet or cold, which we have seen this spring, as well as flea beetle injury or seed placed fertilizer injury. And then also to scout for blackleg lesions. So these are going, and I have a picture in a slide or two, but these are going to look like these off-white patches on your leaves with black dots, so small black pycnidia, and you're going to see those. And so scouting for those and potentially considering an early season foliar fungicide application. And so this is particularly important if you knew that in your previous year you had infected fields nearby as well, because those pycnidia and pseudothecia will actually travel and can infect your current canola stands. So it's really key to step into the field and see if you have potential for that, and it's there. And this last kind of point around current field checks. Again, fertility, we've had a lot of moisture. So has your yield potential changed, or is a top dress needed? To ask those questions as well. And then also just to take a look, and as you're in the field, are you seeing any seed place fertilizer toxicity or nutrient deficiencies as well? And always happy to chat about what those look like as well. So all of this, if you're in the field here in June, it is getting about time to do, canola stand counts when your canola is hitting that 3 to 4 leaves. And so checking for all of these things, we've talked about if you're seeing potential problems here in your field, and also knowing it's good to just do those stand counts to see if you hit your target in terms of seeding rate. And so you can do this when your canola hits 3 to 4 leaves. And with a hula hoop meter stick canola count ring, there's lots of different options. And recommend doing not just one count, but doing a couple, of course, in your field, and taking a look. But how did you line up against that ideal 5 to 8 or 5 to 7 plants per foot squared? And it's a great benchmark just to take a look and see as well how the season went in your seeding here this spring. So I'm going to really quickly then run through this just for what's upcoming in your field checks, what's to be on your mind, several similar things, but also I've just added one more here. But in terms of insects, just keeping on top of, again, your flea beetles, cutworms, and potentially wireworms, still seeing activity in those. And then in terms of diseases here, I have an example of that lesion that you can look for here coming up potentially on your plant that would indicate the presence of blackleg. And there's also a lot of resources in terms of actually confirming that you have blackleg in your plants as well. And then also just being cognizant and aware that with the higher moisture that we've had and with the coming warming temperatures and canopy closure, that there is a higher risk for sclerotinia as well, which will very much can affect your canola yield. So also being on top of that, because the most important fight against sclerotinia is having that timely application of your fungicide and knowing when to go in and to put that on to protect your yield. And then, of course, with fertility, looking for any potential deficiencies in your crop and the need to potentially top dress or try and mitigate that as well. So that's been kind of a very brief overview of the season or spring so far here, and looking forward to the rest of it. And so if there's any topics as well you want to chat more about or have questions about, please don't hesitate to contact. And thank you so much.
Okay, Sonia, there's a couple questions. One question is regarding the are there any varieties that are early season? I guess they're looking for late seeding late here, and if there are any varieties that they should be looking to that are shorter growing season.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely would direct to Seed Manitoba. They have a great list of varieties there that were in variety trials and have dates. And as well, I can also send, if they want to send me an email, some as well. But there's definitely some options.
Okay, and with the wet conditions, any recommendations regarding broadcast seeding?
Oh, sorry, I put myself on mute here. So definitely, something to look at with those seeding deadlines approaching. I'd say, I might have to. Can we come back to that one at the end, Lionel? And I could,
Sure.
yeah.
You bet. And I think the second part of the question that is regarding broadcast seeding is seeding rates too. So if you're going to go to broadcast seeding, do you need to be seeding heavier or I guess seeding rates, I guess.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll pull. Yeah, I have that. I'll do at the end here then.
Okay, we'll pick you back up on that one when we're getting through the panel here. Okay, so the crop scouting panel today, and we've been getting some questions coming in because of a lot of questions coming in lately because of weather conditions, and whether it's the wind, it's just rain, moisture, everything. So some of them will be referring to that, but the first question is going to go to David and to Sonia, and basically it's with current weather, wind, rain, and cool conditions, will the potential for blackleg, is there more potential for blackleg in canola this spring? So David, I think you had some information on this you wanted to talk about.
Sure, Lionel, thank you. First of all, I'll direct your attention to those pictures, the two on the left. You can see that's not a completely natural situation. There's vermiculite on the surface. And so those are in pots. And those canola cotyledons have been inoculated with the fungus, probably a spore suspension, but they've also been intentionally wounded. I did this kind of work a long time ago when I was an assistant at Ag Canada in Saskatoon. We used to do this, and it is a means of determining the major gene resistance that is found in a canola plant. But the wounding is essential at that stage, and the possibility of wounding at a later stage can increase the incidence and severity of blackleg on stems. When we do our surveys, we're looking primarily at the base of the plant, because that's where the rubber hits the road, as we say. If there are significant lesions right near the base, that will cut off the flow of moisture and nutrients to the whole plant. And then, though the plant is taking up space, it's not yielding anything. So that's definitely going to be a yield issue. When we're pulling plants, we're also looking at lesions higher up the stem. And sometimes we find that they're associated with an injury, and that injury is probably on one side of the plant as compared to the other side or the rest of the plant. And that is because of the directional nature of hail. Hail often comes in a strong wind, and that kind of physically opens up the stem to spores that are still flying around at that time. There is generally less yield impact from that kind of damage, although you know, if the crop really gets chopped up, then you've got other issues to be concerned about, probably a delay in maturity. So we've had cool and rainy conditions, and those, I really haven't heard many reports of hail injury. This would get to be an issue later in the season when we have the combination of warmer temperatures and continuing showers and or hail injury. Blackleg can come to us from a number of different places. As Sonia mentioned, there are two types of spores that are involved. The ones produced from parathecia, the sexual stage of the fungus, they can blow longer distances. So those can come from neighboring fields. And if you had canola next door, there's a good chance that there are those ascospores coming off of parathecia, and depending on prevailing winds, that can move them into your crop. The other type of spore-producing structures, the pycnidia, those asexual spores, they only ooze out when it's wet, and they're moved short distances by rain splash. If you're looking closely in those lesions around the black pepper dots, you may see a little bit of pink, and that is the spores that have oozed out, maybe dried on the surface, but they can be reactivated when you have rainfall. And then you'll have localized spread within the field. I'm not really excited about blackleg at this time. We have very good resistance built into most of our varieties, although there are new races of the pathogen out there that might overcome that major gene resistance. And then we'd be relying on tolerance or minor gene resistance later on. I think that's enough for me, Lionel. I hope I haven't overdone it.
No, actually, um, another question, and this one just came to me yesterday. With the wind we've been having in some areas, the wind has been pretty severe. And I've talked to some producers where they've seen their canola get wounded pretty good, cut up pretty good in places. And they have been talking about spraying a fungicide on it now. What do you think of something like that? Is that going to make any difference? They're more of a thinking of a protective measure than anything, I think.
Right. I had a discussion with my provincial counterparts in Saskatchewan and Alberta and some folks from the Canola Council. And the general consensus is that foliar application early is only of benefit in a number of situations, especially where you've put yourself behind the 8 ball. When you have been practicing a tight rotation, say canola every 2 years or 2 years out of 3. If you have not used a seed treatment, I don't really think that is almost possible anymore. Most seed comes pre-treated, and there is protection from blackleg in that seed treatment. It's always tempting to think that because of convenience, it's easy to throw in a fungicide at herbicide timing. The same question comes up in cereals, but there is not strong evidence that that ends up paying back in terms of yield, except in those very irresponsible situations.
Okay. Yeah, like I would say a lot of rotations, at least in the Southwest, are a lot of our wheat canola, wheat, uh, peas canola or something like that. So basically, if it's not every second year, it's every third year. So
there can still be a risk there, but it is less than when you're really pushing it.
okay, good. Thanks, David. The next one for Kim. With the weather over the past week and producers falling behind in spraying, when scouting fields, are there certain weeds we should be looking for to make sure we're making the right, herbicide choice when we're going out there as to, I guess, the harder to kill weeds? Are we making sure we're identifying them, and what are your opinions there?
Okay, thanks, Lionel. Yeah, I guess all of them. We need to be spraying all of the weeds. But I know we're going to have to pick and choose and get on. We're behind on everything. I think everybody's falling behind with the poor weather we've been having between, wet fields and wind events. And if you can't get on with a ground rig, there's always aerial application. But again, they can't spray in the wind either. So we've had some terribly windy days. So the biggest thing I'm worried about probably is any herbicide resistant weeds. You cannot let those weeds go to seed because you're just multiplying the problem for yourself later on. So in particular, kochia and wild oats. So you want to get ahead of fields that if you know or you suspect you have any resistant weeds on them, you want to make sure those fields are taken care of as soon as possible. You're going to have to. Some are just going to get sprayed later than you want. There's just no way around that. They still do need to get sprayed, but for sure I'd be showcasing those ones. I think for some of our weeds, like you've got some pictures there, the dandelions are already in full flower. The cleavers those are already really big. Those are overwintering cleavers, I'd assume, at their winter annual, as well as we've, the bottom picture, nightfly and catchfly. We've seen some monstrously big nightfly and catchfly already this year, and those ones are beyond spraying now. So you can't really be looking at those and thinking you want to get those, because you're not going to get those anyways, probably. So you're going to have to just live with some of that for now. Anything where you've got some perennials like dandelions that have gotten out of control, or if you've got some quackgrass or some thistle problems, those ones, then you need to start looking at your pre-harvest, already planning your pre-harvest and your fall sprays as well to go after those perennials because it's just far too late. And you know, if we are seeing more and more winter annuals, then you know, discussing what your fall weed control program looks like, whether it's tillage or spraying or a combination. I know we haven't had a lot of tillage in the last few years, just when it's, you know, been trying to preserve soil moisture and things. And so, you know, we have been seeing an awful lot of winter annual weeds this year, but there also was a lot of early season moisture to get those going. So we're seeing some issues with that. But yeah, so some of those big weeds may be too far gone already. And so you're going to have to just, you know, switch gears and go to a different field. But for sure, anywhere where you suspect you have herbicide resistant weeds, just do not let those go to seed. Make sure you get on those ones in a timely manner if you can, and try to get ahead of those because we don't want those seeds hitting the ground and then, like I said, multiplying the problem for future years.
Okay, good. Some good points there, Kim. And hopefully the wind stays down so guys can get out there and get some spraying done.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Lionel.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Kim. I think there'll be another one coming up for you here right away. But Dennis, with the high winds, I was called out to a field south of Cirrus soybean field where the wind had blown. In this picture here, you can see where it's blowing the leaves that had the unifoliates, and I'm not sure if this one was going into trifoliate yet or not, but and even one of the cotyledons was blowing off. Your opinion or your experience in working with injuries to soybean plants that have been either suffering from wind damage or even just regular damage. What's your opinion on some of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, thanks, Lionel. I'm going to share my screen. I pulled up
Sure.
those pictures that you sent me last night, and I have it on one screen here. So just give me a second here,
You bet.
and it'll just show it a little better here. And we're gonna just get rid of this here. And I'm gonna go full screen here. There we go. Okay, can you see my screen here now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna go pointer options here and just kind of show you here what I was kind of looking at. So these are the pictures that Lionel sent me here last night. So something to keep in mind, the picture on the right here, you can see here are your cotyledons or your seed halves. You can see a little bud here, axillary bud. And this is where your terminal bud is going to be. This is your main growing point. And you can see here, this plant has had some unifoliate leaves already, and those are gone. So as long as your terminal bud is good, those plants are going to just continue to grow. If that terminal bud is damaged, you're going to get regrowth from the axillary buds. So a lot of times what I'm hearing from some growers too is that the cotyledons are getting knocked off. That I'm not really concerned about because the cotyledons of the seed halves, and they're basically going to fall off anyways. When you look at the plant itself, probably the best thing to do is don't go look at it the next day. Give it a few days to see the regrowth. Like if you go out there the next day and you see a lot of damaged plants, you're going like, oh, I might want to reseed. But as long as you have either your terminal bud here or your axillary buds here at where the cotyledons are, if they're still intact, they will continue to regrow if that terminal bud is damaged. If it's snapped below the cotyledons, then that plant is damaged. So what I would suggest is after you do the initial assessment saying, okay, yeah, we have damaged plants here, do a stand count. See where your stand count is. Ideal stand count is between 140 and 160,000 plants per acre. Even if you're at 80,000 plants, that's still okay on the herbicide tolerant systems because you can keep it clean. And then what you need to do is you need to come back about 3 or 4 days at minimum later to reassess. And if you do that, then you'll find a lot of the regrowth will start to happen and things will improve. So don't pull out the air seeder right away. Make sure you assess the damage, assess what stand you have left. And if you have a good stand left, then just walk away and come back a week later or so and reassess.
Yeah, that's kind of what we agreed with when I was in the field with them, and it looked like we were getting regrowth from the terminal point. If it comes from the auxiliary, are you still going to get the same potential plant that you would if it had not been, like if it was from the terminal?
Yeah, and a lot of times what happens when the terminal bud is damaged, the axillary buds kick in the potential is still there. Those plants will regrow. I've taken, through frost, for example, where we've seen the terminal bud get nicked off and the regrowth happens. The plants in soybeans do tend to regrow. They tend to branch a bit more. They don't seem to do the same thing in dry beans. They do to a certain point, but not to the same extent as what soybeans do. So generally, probably what you're going to be seeing is you're going to be seeing a lot of damage to the cotyledons. You might see some terminal buds, but here in both of these pictures here, you can see that terminal bud is still there yet. It's just the unifoliate leaves are gone. So it'll still continue to grow, especially at this early stage. I wouldn't worry about it too much. But as I said earlier, if it's snipped below the cotyledons, then those plants are done.
Okay, good. Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks.
Laurie, I'm going to check in with you to see if there's any questions.
Yes, I actually do have a question, and it's going to be for Sonia. All right, Sonia. So with growers that have good growing conditions and the canola crop potentially having a better yield potential, how can growers maximize their opportunity to capture this? For example, adjusting fertilizer.
Thanks, Laurie. Yeah, no, it's a good question. So basically, I would say that as we've had moisture and looking at if you've got, your seed in your ground and establishment, taking a look, doing those plant stand counts, and if it looks like you want to target a new yield, so taking a look, and if your potential you think can go up, your yield potential here for this season, going back and taking a look at should you go in with top dress with some more nitrogen here, especially as before canola starts to bolt. You need to do it ahead of canola bolting, so that canola has that opportunity, has those nutrients there to give it that energy to bolt and set it up for the rest of the season. So definitely taking a look right ahead of that, is really key here for potentially pushing your target yield. And then Lionel, do I have a chance here to answer the broadcast question?
Sorry, Sonia, you bet.
Okay, yeah. And then I'll just head over here to the broadcast question. So the main thing in terms of broadcasting, either if you're doing ground rig or aerial, is just making sure that you have put enough seed and seeding rate, of course, so that you have a sufficient stand that emerges and pops up, so that it is insured and covered ahead here of the mass deadlines. So a recommendation is potentially even going up to even a pound more per acre. And if you have the option, if you can harrow pack or light disc, as soon as possible after broadcasting, if you can get in to do that, that's going to really help your emergence and your stand establishment, just because you won't have put that in. You'll have some uneven depth and emergence as well. So yeah, I just want to answer that too.
Okay, Sonia, one more thing for you. It'd be a couple of days ago, I got a call from a producer that made an error with his drill and sowed about, I think he said it was about 40 acres, and it landed up being about 12 pounds. And so it was interesting with the question that came in regarding fertility. If he's got the moisture, would it make sense to put some extra nutrients on those 40 acres to get more potential, or is he just going to make thicker plants and and not increase his yield at all?
Yeah, so you definitely have to be, it's definitely a question about your return on investment here, because your canola being spaced that tightly is not going to have that room to fully pod out to its potential, with as compared to for sure the recommended seeding rate. So I think you could have some room to top dress that could be helpful just because you have so many plants in those tight space, but it definitely, you won't be getting a normal ideal yield per plant with that kind of seeding rate. So I think, yeah, definitely a little bit of a top dress potentially would be helpful, but not, yeah, you can't treat it as the same situation as having a typical seeding rate just because you have so many plants there in your rows. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks, Sonia. Okay, next question will be for Kim. Getting a couple calls lately about some more than likely crop tolerance issues on some of the crops that have been sprayed. What are some things we should watch for, and things that conditions and symptoms that we might see when we are seeing crop tolerance? And I guess what might be causing, or why might we be seeing more of it this year than, or at this time, than other years?
Okay, thanks, Lionel. Yeah, the pictures you've got there, you've got, some damage on some cereals. And first of all, like normally we can expect to see some type of not necessarily damage, but some type of crop response to the herbicides we're spraying. Whenever we spray a herbicide, the crops that we're spraying it on take it in, they just metabolize it and it doesn't kill them. And so normally, though, they are taking that herbicide in. So there is a chance that sometimes when their metabolism slows down, or if there's circumstances where that herbicide actually can cause a little bit of crop tolerance issues, it shouldn't outright kill them. It's not supposed to. There would be something usually something else going on if that happens. But sometimes we do see some symptoms, and generally though, like you can see some crop stunting, some yellowing, kind of like a more limey, like a lime green color instead of a nice dark green color in our cereals and things. You can see, with canola and stuff, we'll see that bronzing from our glufosinate applications. But lots of times, in almost every case, the crop will outgrow it. I wouldn't be surprised to be seeing more this year. First of all, we've got lots of moisture. And so when we have moisture and we haven't had hot temperatures, and so our plants have a thinner cuticle on their leaves, which is like a waxy coating that protects the leaf and prevents it from drying out. And so when we have a thinner cuticle, we tend to get more, the herbicide gets into the plant a little more quickly and gets a little bit more in there. And so, it usually means it works quite well on the weeds. And so then, but it also can mean sometimes we see a little bit more crop tolerance issues, just because we've got that, that cuticle is thinner and that product is getting in that much quicker. We also, to go along with that, we've also had some cool nights. And sometimes after cool nights, this is when we see sometimes our herbicides don't work very well. And because they're not working as well on the weeds as we want them to. They're a little bit slower. They're not doing the job we want them to do. And we can see some crop tolerance issues there as well, if we're spraying following some really cool nights. And that's because after a cool night, all of the metabolism slows down in the weeds and in the crop. And so we do see sometimes a little bit more crop tolerance issues when we're spraying following those cool nights, because the crop is slowed down a bit and it just doesn't have as much, it doesn't metabolize the herbicides as quickly as they normally do, because they're basically under a little bit of stress. So anything, and of course, if we've got water, we've got excess water in a lot of areas. So that's affecting, that affects the oxygen status in the soil, which affects, the plants, the roots, and that type of thing. And so anything that is causing any kind of a stress can definitely lead to more crop tolerance issues. So I think, we've got a lot of different factors at play, and I think they're all, again, I'm not surprised at all to see more crop tolerance issues this year. And again, in most cases, we don't see any long lasting effects of it. It may hold the crop back a little bit. We may see a bit of shortening, that color change, but usually the crop will outgrow that as soon as, it does have a chance to metabolize the product. And, as soon as, we get good growing conditions and the plants get growing again. So we shouldn't see any long lasting effects of that in most cases. But again, case by case, if there's other circumstances at play, then, we have to look at those as well. But, because this is where fertility and other things, just a lot of other issues could be at play. But generally, if it's a crop tolerance issue, the plants should outgrow it and end up being just fine.
Okay, and one other thing I was thinking about after we had talked, we might be pushing staging a little bit on some of the products too, so that could that cause some tolerance issues as well?
Yeah, and lots of times too, sometimes there's two things there you do have to watch the tolerance. Because I know some of our very earliest seeded wheat is pushing out flag leaf now. So, those are the very, very early seeded cereals. And those have hopefully been sprayed a very long time ago. There are products that are safe up until, later. So you do need to take a look at your herbicide labels. You may need to pull back on that. Some of them you have to be really careful with staging on some of them. Watch for the nodes in the stem and that type of thing. So really watch your labels, and you may need to switch out products as if your crops are advancing beyond where they should be. And I'm thinking something like a Velocity, great product, but you really have to watch the staging. You do not want to be putting that one on too late, and that's very clearly stated on the label, and that's in our product pages in our guide to crop protection as well. So if you're getting beyond safe staging on that one, you need to pull back and use a different product. And then we also have to be careful too with MRLs. The maximum residue limits are set, and there needs to be a minimum amount of time from the time that chemical was applied until harvest. And so for some of our products, the MRLs are quite long. And so you really need to be respectful of that as well, depending on which product and which crop it is. But some of them are quite long, and you need to be really careful with those, because we need to be making sure that we're not, that's a marketing issue. It's certainly not a health issue or anything like that, but that is a marketing issue, and we need to make sure that we're not jeopardizing those markets.
Good. Thanks, Kim.
I've got one here for you, Kim.
Sure.
Once wheat crops, and you may have already answered this in just what you have just done. Once wheat crops reach the 5-leaf stage, is there any herbicide that we need to avoid?
Well, the Velocity is one for sure. And like I said, that is a great product, does a great job, but you really have to watch that one on staging. And then after that, it just depends. A lot of the broadleaf products are quite safe, and we do have, some of the broadleaf products are quite safe, later, till later on, when the crops are, up to full flag, that type of thing. So it's really but you just have to watch and check them. But the Velocity is one that comes to mind. Just be careful with that one, because we want to make sure that one works. It does work really well, and we just want to make sure that one is not too hard on the crop, because it can cause issues if it's put on too late. If you can feel that second node in the stem, I think that's how the wording is. I guess I should check the wording. It's in the guide to crop protection, but you just have to watch the staging on that one. And otherwise, most of the time, you've got your summers in that 1 to 6 or 2 to 6 leaf. So I think for most of us in the province, we're probably still in a pretty good spot. And I do think those very early seeded cereal crops are in an area where they've been where they've already been sprayed. So we're safe on that. But I mean, we have to watch all crops. We're going to have to watch all of our crops. We want to make sure that we're not getting too late on anything for any of our other, like our oil seeds and our broadleaf crops as well.
Okay, great, Kim. Thanks. Yeah, and I think for the guys with some pulse crops, our peas especially, I guess we need to watch some of those too, because staging is important once it gets past so many nodes too. So
yeah, usually you have up to 6 nodes depending on the product, but you've got up to 6 nodes, and the peas, they always fool you. They don't look like they have 6 nodes. You cannot go by height. You have to be on there, and you have to be pull up the plants, and you have to look at them. You have to count the nodes, because you don't want to go beyond. You can cause some real yellow flashing and really set the crop back. Again, labels are very clear on what the staging should be, and beyond that staging, lots of times it just gets too hard on the crop.
perfect. Thanks, Kim. Okay, that's gonna complete the questions right now, unless Lori, there's been something else that's come in.
Nope, all clear so far.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little bit of the highlights of the crop report. So wet conditions, that's been something that we've talked about quite a bit. We did make fairly good seeding progress. We're about 92% complete across the province. Our spring cereals, peas, grain corn, are about 97%. Canola, soybeans, about 88 to 92% complete. And many of the unseeded acres are acres that still need to be planted right now are or have been planned for canola. I have talked to a couple producers that are looking at maybe some green feed right now, but I guess we'll see what happens over the next little while, and hopefully things dry out so guys can get back out there. Cereal wise, our fall rye, I've seen fields that are heading out already, so that's good to see. Winter wheat definitely getting close to seeing some early heads coming, but still not quite heading yet. Um, Mentioned about the spring wheat seeding is about 98% complete. A lot of the wheat is in the 3 to 5 leaf stage, and as Kim mentioned, kind of that 3 to 6 leaf stage, and kind of right in the prime time for spraying. So we need to get that done. Barley and oats about 97% complete. There might be some green feed there left to go. Talked to a few producers with their grain corn. A lot of it is planted, but it's growing fairly slow and seems to be just kind of sitting in one spot there. So I think we definitely need some heat to get that stuff going and off and running. Canola planting, and that's kind of one of the ones to finish off the year with, I think, here yet. And there's about 88% complete. And sunflower is about 61% complete, flax about 76. And field peas, I would say, are, anybody that was planning on field peas would probably have had them in by now. There are some areas that have been really wet in the province, and some of those areas are the areas that still are looking at some of these crops. But I think this coming week, with a lot of the seeding deadlines coming up, is going to be definitely something that we're going to run into and see what producers are going to do after those deadlines. So where do we sit right now? We're about 92% complete compared to our 5-year average of about 96% complete. So pretty much bang on where we should be. And we talked about the seeding deadlines. I think the biggest thing here, takeaway from this slide, is to check with your local MASC office service center, and just to confirm your location and your seeding deadlines and what your coverage will be.
Excuse me, Lionel. Kim has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, hi, Kim.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kim. Oh, you're muted, Kim.
Sorry about that. The velocity in Vero, I was wrong on the staging. It's the first node. As soon as you feel the first node, you need to switch to a different product. You can only spray that until you find that first node on the stem. So just be really careful with that one. And the other one's just basically, you still need to be counting leaves. You basically, most times you have up to 6 leaf stage and a few tillers by then. So sorry about that. Didn't mean to make that mistake.
No problem. Thanks for clearing that up, Kim. Thanks. Crop diagnostic school coming up in about a little less than a month's time here. So I know everybody in Carmen has been busy getting the location all set and ready to get all the plots going. So July 3rd, 4th, 9th, 10th, and 11th are set for agronomists and students. I guess anybody's welcome any day, but July 5th is the farmer day. So in that situation, a lot of times if you're a member or you pay fees for your canola council, wheat growers, whatever, your registration is covered. So to register, there's the email address or the website, sorry, it's the email address. You could register that way. Include your name, your email address, and your phone number, and this way they'll get you on the list and get you registered. So this will be coming up quite quickly here, so definitely get your name in so you can get in on the day you want, because they only accept so many people per day. Field crop production guide. Kim mentioned it a couple times today. I think it's a very important book to have, especially when we're going to be spraying crops at different staging. We need to be able to know we don't want to go out and hurt our crops at this timing. So definitely pick up one of these books if you don't have one already. Our hay listing. Keep mentioning if you got hay for sale, and I think now we're getting to the point where we might have some guys in a short time here start looking at cutting some of this year's hay. So if you're looking at cutting some hay and getting some bales marketed, there's a good spot to go and market your hay. Our crop production extension specialist, if you got some questions about things going on in the field, I know things have been getting kind of busy with weed IDs, just some things going on with the temperature and the wind and going out to the field. So if you got any questions, give any one of these guys a call. They can definitely give you a hand. Our livestock people, if you got any questions about cattle going on pasture or cattle on pasture that you want to do something with, give these people a call. They can give you a hand with any of your livestock questions. There's our MASC service centers, our locations and 1-800 numbers. And with that, Lori, if there's no more questions, that'll be it for today.
It's all clear.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I'd like to thank the panel for answering all the questions. There was a good stream of questions that came in this week, and keep them coming in. And there's my contact and Lori's contact information, and we'll see you next week, June the 19th. Thanks for attending.